So the way this is going to work is I'm going to talk about the things that we started. I'm going to do a little screen share here so you can see it. So we're going to go over these: how to eliminate reactive and impulsive responses to triggers, how to conquer shame and negative beliefs about self, and how to repair safety, trust, and connection. So I'm super excited to talk about these things because changing these things in my life took me a long time and a lot of effort and a lot of discouragement. And these are things that so many of us are looking for. And over the past several years, I've found effective answers that we don't have to live with this stuff. I know a lot of us try to overcome these different things that cause us to struggle and that get in the way of the relationships we want. And I was looking for better ways to get where I wanted to be. So these 3 secrets are part of what we're going to cover today. And this will be recorded. And if you want, I can send you a copy after if you'd like to share it with others or have for you to watch again. The things I talk about today will be really valuable to go over again and to really have this hope and this belief that I can get where I want to go. So we're going to go over these. Let me go back to me. Stop share. Everyone can see me again. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to go just for a minute. I want to talk about why I'm so passionate about these topics. For a long time, I was not the man I wanted to be, and it was frustrating because I knew who I wanted to be. I remember I was 21 years old. I gotten home from an LDS mission, and I was a little bit lost, actually. I had kind of lived a crazy high school lifestyle. I joined the LDS church when I was 15, but already didn't kind of feel good enough. I had been addicted to pornography at a young age and just didn't feel amazing about me and my ability to live the gospel that I joined and things like that. And so I kind of fell away from the church and had no interest in continuing until some different life circumstances caused me to really consider the path I was on. And I realized this is going to lead to misery. I remember very distinctly this clarity where it was like 2 roads were in front of me, and one was going to lead to a girl I was dating getting pregnant, probably, and the other one was going to lead to me changing my life and becoming a better person. So I decided to go down the path to change, and I had to get sober from my addiction, which I didn't even really realize was an addiction at the time. And what was interesting is when I made that decision, I actually was able to stop without any relapses. And I didn't have any relapses for a long, long time, pretty close to 4 years. And when I did relapse, that was an isolated incident, and I didn't have any more slips for almost another 3 years, I believe. And so I didn't think I had an addiction. I started dating when I returned home from the Philippines. I met my wife, and we started dating and decided to get married. And I felt like those things were behind me. They weren't a part of me anymore. And so I didn't share anything about pornography addiction or any things I had done in the past in that realm, thinking it wasn't a thing, not thinking anything about I've had an addiction or anything like that. I'd never even thought that way. So we got married and started to struggle right off the bat. I look back now, we've talked about this a lot, and it was like we just weren't prepared for what marriage would be. We had a lot of love for each other. I still love her, obviously, a lot, and I loved her then. And I knew the type of man I wanted to be, the type of husband I wanted to be. When we were dating, it was magical. It was so happy for both of us, and we really believed this marriage thing's just going to be easy. We're just going to get along and build a life together. And really quickly, it was rough. It was hard. We were fighting often, but we were also having a lot of good times. And over the course of 3 years, I turned to the internet and started to come across things from the past and started down the path of addiction again. And to be honest, I compare those times when I was a teenager to what it was like when I was married. It was night and day difference. That's when I feel like I really, really got addicted and it was taking over. And I was totally losing myself, who I was. I had been a fairly laid back guy, happy, friendly, outgoing, confident. And when I started messing up in our marriage, I was surprised. Where's this anger coming from? Where's this reactivity coming from? And I went to a therapist on my own and a 12-step group for 18 months. And then we went to another therapist together. And we were just struggling as a couple, not just because of the acting out. It was more so because we would fight all the time. And we had a lot of love, and we were trying our best, and it just wasn't working. And the addiction was starting to progress for me more and more, and I just felt a lot of shame. My dad had my parents divorced because of my dad's addiction, and I knew the pain that brought to my wife, and I didn't want that. And yet I was stuck. So everything we were trying wasn't working. I had talked to several priesthood leaders. I had gone to these therapists and meetings. So we decided I was going to become a therapist. And in that decision, the goal was I will overcome this addiction, repair our marriage, and become the man I want to be. And what's crazy is I look back at it now. When I entered, recovery, I started going to therapy and attending, pornography addiction recovery groups. Everything actually got much harder for a long time. I think the shame mounted. I adopted this identity of I'm an addict and everything that's associated with that. And I remember, it was so confusing for me because everything negative about me was lumped into this identity. And I remember being told and reinforced, you're angry because you're an addict. You have shame because you're an addict. You aren't on time to things because you're an addict, right? All things led to this identity. And I just started to feel like, geez, well, I'm just kind of worthless. I'm just a bad person. And these feelings of not being lovable really set in. And I was always trying to escape, doing everything I could. I was cutting off, computer access. I was going to great lengths, but still I would find a way. And for those of you that know the feelings of addiction, it's insanity. It's frustrating. 99% of the time you're telling yourself, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It's not in line with my values. I don't like it. Yet you find yourself going back. And that was my reality. But I was committed. I wanted to have what we had before. I remembered vividly what it was like to have my wife genuinely be happy to be close to me, to be married to me. And while I knew she still loved me, that closeness, that connection was gone. The safety, the trust wasn't there for her towards me. And I understood that. And so we kept fighting. I made a commitment. Some of you have heard me say this, whatever it takes, as long as it takes. And I meant that. I also committed to complete honesty, which was challenging. I had to tell my wife some really hard things, really risking that she might leave me. I actually see now that me being honest is probably what kept us together. She knew that I was willing to try, and even though I was honest about hard things, she didn't have to wonder if she could trust me. No, hang on. Phone. I gotta learn that for next time, right? No phones. I should know better. So this idea of rebuilding trust, I think she started to trust me more and more. Not trust that I wouldn't act out, but she trusted I wouldn't hide, that I wouldn't lie, and she trusted that I would keep fighting and keep working. And we had a conversation recently, and I asked, why did you stay? I know a lot of women would have left me, even though we had good times. And she said, it's because you were always fighting. You were always trying. I could see you were working hard. And I won't go into the whole history right now, but My journey was a total of 8 therapists and good therapists, and it was helpful, but it was like I was super broken was the feeling I had. I was like, man, I need more help than anybody. I actually remember one of my early therapists, this is what he said. He said, Austin, he's like, you've gone below all things. And then he said, not like Jesus, you've gone below all things addiction. And I took that to mean, I am the worst of the worst. All these things they're telling me that should be working aren't working for me. I must be like the most broken person alive. And it was even more shame for me because I looked at my childhood at the time and I really minimized, my pain and some of the things that I went through because I was a therapist at that point and I was working with people with much heavier things. And it just didn't make sense. Like me being addicted didn't make sense. And so I just carried these beliefs. I'm a bad person. I'm not lovable. And I would beat myself up all the time. But my relapses were infrequent. More of our problems were I was angry. I was easily irritable. I wouldn't want to be, but I would slip into these real quick, snapping at my wife or my kids, or I'd be in heavy shame and I'd just be grumpy, which was totally not my personality. And I was so aware, I was just like, who am I now? I knew I had lost myself because I knew who I had been. I had been this happy, confident, kind, loving, thoughtful person, and I wasn't there anymore. And it was really hard to find myself again. And so I just continued. Different therapists, different, trainings, just everything was looking at me. And there came a point where, honestly, just diving in to being a complete addict was, seemed like a viable option. I was miserable. My wife was happy, then miserable, then happy, then miserable. I couldn't keep it consistent. I'd work really hard to rebuild connection and trust, and then I'd tear it down. And we did that for so long. And all the things I was learning in addiction recovery just weren't working, honestly. And I started to study in different areas of therapy, realizing that these other therapists, these other models of therapy weren't addiction recovery related, but these therapist models were still seeing people with addictions. They're still seeing wives who had been betrayed. They were still working with couples with these issues. And I started to learn about that. And some of the things that had been told, hey, Austin, this is because you're an addict, I now learned this is actually because of these things that took place in your childhood, or these are from trauma, or these are connected to attachment. And these behaviors that I was struggling with started to make so much more sense. And I started to see the way I've been trying to overcome them through addiction recovery will never bring me the results I want because these are not based in me being addicted. And that was relieving for me because up to that point it was super hopeless. I was just trying so much different addiction recovery things because I thought every negative thing about me was because I was an addict. And so I actually started to step outside of the addiction realm looking for answers. We stopped seeing addiction recovery and betrayal trauma therapists. I stopped going to group. At that point, I was still seeing 30 plus clients a week and running 2 groups, and everybody I was seeing was coming to me for a sexual addiction and the effects of it in their marriage. And I was trying to help them overcome the behavior, overcome the trauma that had been caused for the partner, and help a couple reconnect. And I started to see people have a lot of make a lot of progress, much more quickly than me and my wife, because I was doing these non-addiction recovery related things. One of them was training in a trauma model, and I was doing that right off the bat, both with the man and the woman. And I was actually doing it oftentimes together, where we would do the man's trauma work in front of his wife or the wife's trauma work in front of the husband, and they could start to see each other a lot differently. Now, I started doing this because me and my wife had done this actually about 3 years into our journey, and it was really helpful. She could see me differently, and I could understand her pain differently and really start to be a source of repairing that for her. And it was very empowering for me to feel like I can start to help my wife's heart heal. It's not dependent on another therapist. It's not dependent on a book. It's not dependent on a group. I can help that. Her and I can work together where I can create safety and trust. I'm going to go into this a little bit more in the future when we get to the secrets of how these things happen. But I started to feel really empowered. Before that, I'd felt hopeless and really this feeling like, how's this ever going to work? Am I going to be stuck forever? And I started to realize, okay, there's answers. There's a road we can walk. And we started to progress and started to rebuild connection. But there were still these times where I would trigger, I'd get upset, or I'd snap, or I'd go into my shame. And I'd have these feelings and these beliefs like she doesn't like me, or that she secretly thought I was an idiot. And I would ask her, I'd be like, hey, I'm feeling like you think I'm an idiot and you wish you weren't married to me. Right? I would say this. And she'd be like, well, why? I asked you to use your blinker or something, silly that shouldn't have brought that message to me, but it did. And as I started to ask her these questions and realized that that wasn't how she was feeling, there was something going on for me that had nothing to do with her. And these beliefs I had were playing all the time. And I started to realize that there's an issue for me. It's my beliefs, it's my thoughts that are getting in the way of us connecting. And so the path I took was long and slow. It included 8 weeks of mindfulness-based stress reduction, a course in mindfulness, a lot of using, mindfulness apps, meditation apps, a lot of affirmations. I remember I would run every day and I would take the last 10 minutes to do affirmations out loud. And I would say each affirmation out loud 10 times. And turns out that when I would have a situation happen, I would still go back to the old way of thinking. It's like all these affirmations weren't changing it when I needed it. And so there was progress and there was happiness, and our marriage would go up and down, and the addiction went away. Like I didn't relapse for several years. And then some life events changed, and I was really actually blown away. I relapsed and I was devastated. Like I thought I was over it, right? And it came back, and I was determined, okay, I have to really be wise on what's going on here, and I need some deeper healing. And so I went back to work. How do I be more aware and more wise? And what I started to realize was I had focused so much energy on sobriety and addiction recovery, I hadn't really worked on who I was becoming. A lot of it was like trying to come out of this negative place and just kind of get to baseline. And I would live in this baseline place of not acting out, but not happy, not connected, not like thriving, right? My beliefs at this point were like, whew, at least I'm not acting out. But there was no thoughts of like, I can be someone great husband, great man, great father. And, I decided like, I'm tired of being unhappy. Like I have a great life. I have a wife who loves me. I have amazing kids. I have a good job where I have the opportunity to help people. I'm tired of being unhappy, and I'm tired of believing that I'm worthless because of mistakes that I made that I'm trying hard to overcome. I'm a spiritual man. I believe in repentance. I believe that we can be forgiven for our mistakes. And I decided I'm going to accept forgiveness. I'm going to accept that I made a mistake yesterday and I've repented and I'm working to do better. I'm going to trust that I can be forgiven and strengthened to live a life the way that I want to. And I stopped focusing on addiction recovery, and I started focusing on who am I going to become? Who's the man I want to be? What does that look like? What does that man do as a husband? What does that man do as a father? What does that man do as he interacts with other people? And instead of studying addiction recovery and trauma things, I started to study like, what do people that I want to be like do? How do they live their lives? And clearly this story of mine that lasted for, most of my life of struggling with addiction, even before I knew it was an addiction. I could go on forever. But there came this really important point where we were in a good spot, me and my wife, and she loved me, and I couldn't feel it. I couldn't trust it. And I became aware that that was actually painful for her. She was trying to give me love. She saw the good in me. She could separate me from my behavior, meaning she didn't see me as just an addict. She saw the good in me too. And I couldn't see it in myself. And I realized as long as I keep believing this about myself, that I'm just this broken, worthless addict, I'm never going to accept love from my wife because I'll never believe I'm worthy of it. And I'm never going to be able to model to my kids that we can overcome our mistakes and become whoever we want to be. And I won't tell the full journey, but it was this process of learning who I really was. And I realized that I was never an addict. I was addicted. And I did things like lie and manipulate and gaslight and these things, but that's not who I was. 99, 98, a lot of percentage of the time, I was actually a good human, a good husband and a good father. But I had these things that would get in the way, these reactions, and they weren't conscious. I wasn't choosing to get upset. I wasn't choosing to relapse. I was just doing these things. It was like my brain would go into autopilot when I didn't want it to. So I realized I know all the answers in the addiction recovery world. I'm a therapist in this realm, and I've been in this game a long time. And the answers I need aren't here. They're not here. And I realized I got to go find them for me. And if they're not available for me, they're not available for others. And so there came a point about 2 years ago where I stepped away from a clinic and I decided whatever it takes, as long as it takes. And I went and did a model of therapy, and it was helpful. And I ended up getting that and opening a clinic and learning it. And I thought, okay, this is helpful, but not quite what I want. There's still more. And so a year ago, I left my practice altogether, stopped practicing therapy. And I took 9 months. I traveled, I researched, I studied. I looked at my whole journey, my marriage, our whole journey. How did we get to this spot where we were? And what else is left? And I determined I'm going to find these pieces. And I started to realize it's not out there. Like what I want, this path that we've all been searching for, it's not there. Now, right, I had searched for the missing, I call it the magic answers, the magic pill. I had searched high and low, hoping that each new therapist had some magic pill. And turns out it wasn't there. So I started to realize I'm going to have to build it. Not a magic pill, but a path. I'm going to have to create a path to help people get where they want to go in a much more direct way. And just this past November, and I'd been in a good spot, but just this past November, I went to a training and I did some work on me, and it changed everything. And I thought to myself, what if that's the missing piece? What if I had started there, 8 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever? And I came home and I started to test that. And I had people saying that I had worked with them for years, right? I had been their therapist with the best things I knew how to do. And they would say things like, that was more effective than anything we've ever done. I feel like that accomplished what, we couldn't get to in several years of weekly therapy. And so I started to realize this is a key ingredient. It's not the magic pill, but without this, we're going to keep this long journey, this 3 to 5 year thing that I had been told. And I think in the video you all saw, it actually took me and my wife 7 years to get to consistently happy, but there was still work to go do, which there always is. We're on a journey as humans. I don't consider my path now addiction recovery. I consider it, I'm a human living life, trying to do my best, being aware of my vulnerabilities. And I don't live in this place of I'm a broken addict. And that is empowering because it allows me to be the man I want to be. So I want to go back for just a minute. I'm going to bring up this screen again real quick before I tell you what we ended up creating. Okay. Oh, I got to share the screen with all of you. 1 second. So, okay. Everybody see that? So this how to eliminate reactive and impulsive responses. Man, this was the hardest thing for me. Like I would do so much work knowing like, when I get reactive, when I get angry, when I get snappy, when I go into, self-loathing and depression, like that destroys everything I've worked towards. And so I just kept doing the same thing I had learned, more mindfulness, more affirmations, all, journaling, all these things. And it wouldn't matter. I knew the right answers, but when a certain situation would happen, I would go right back to the old way. I had done 12-step, 8 therapists, neurofeedback, EMDR. I had done the most advanced things, and my brain would still trigger. And I realized I got to get to this part of the brain where these patterns lie, because my consciousness knows this is not what I want to do, right? But I would just go there anyway. It wasn't choice. It was just instant, okay? And so I started studying this, and I went to some trainings and saw that, hey, people are learning how to shift this and actually really rapidly. Like I was doubtful, and I got up on stage and I had this situation with my daughter. I've told some of you this story. This situation with my daughter where every time she would get upset, like have a 4-year-old fit, I would like go into this panic mode instantly. I didn't even know what the emotion was until much later on. I realized that what I felt in that moment was helpless. And as I identified that emotion, I started to realize how often I feel hopeless. And it was, helpless. Helpless, not hopeless. It was all the time. Like every situation that I was triggering, I felt helpless. Like, I don't know what to do here. I don't have the power to change things. And I'd get like really anxious and irritable and things like that. So I get up on stage at this training and I'm kind of like challenging the guy like, yeah, right, you can't do this that fast. Some of you heard the story. And 17 minutes later, like this issue was gone and it never has come back. Now my daughter still does the same thing, but I don't go back to the same line of thinking or feeling. I'm not managing the feeling. I'm not being mindful of how I feel, trying not to react. My brain is not reading that situation the same way. It's not activating chemical dump that floods the body, and it's not leading to a reaction, okay? Now this process we have built into what we call our breakthrough sessions, and it's something we use at Rise Week. It's a huge change element that I've never seen in any other model of therapy. And what's important about this is when I was director of one of the clinics, my role was to train all the therapists and to figure out more effective treatment. So I don't know this for a fact, but I've probably trained in more models of therapy than most therapists I know, because my job was to keep seeking and seeking and seeking. In no other model of therapy had I seen something so effective and the results were lasting. And I'm not going to go too much into the brain science here. I'll do that in another place. But when we start to understand how the brain stores and creates these patterns and these perceptions that cause us to react, undoing them actually can happen really rapidly. So I had seen this happen. I had experienced it, but I still didn't know how to do it. It took 14 more days of training and a lot of reading to kind of understand the neuroscience behind this. How does it work in the brain? And once I was trained in that, I decided I will never go back to weekly therapy. The process takes 4 to 6 hours, but then it's done. And that was amazing to me. And so I thought, okay, this is a total game changer. We can target these areas of life where people are reactive, they're impulsive, they have these, right, this term we use, trigger, and then a behavior follows. And it's not a conscious thought. If you think about it, you don't choose to be anxious. You don't go, oh, I think I want to feel some anxiety today, right? That's not how it happens. You just feel anxious. The brain is reading what's there, and it's creating this chemical dump that creates the emotion, which then creates the behavior, okay? So this breakthrough process that we do in our breakthrough sessions and at our Rise Week, I'm confident in saying we can accomplish in 4 days at Rise Week what normally would take several years with any other type of therapy. I know a lot of them, and it's because they aren't targeting the right thing. We all have had those really great insights and even emotional experiences during therapy or in reading a book or listening to a podcast. And it's nice in the moment, and we store it in our prefrontal cortex where we store things, but it doesn't go deep enough to change the old pattern, okay? Now I want to go into secret 2 a little bit, how to conquer shame and negative beliefs about self. Because to be honest, what's triggering all those other reactive behaviors are these beliefs we have, and we actually don't even have to be thinking them consciously because the brain is built to store memories. So over time, when we've fed ourselves, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, right? Again and again and again, eventually the brain just goes, okay, we got it. And let's feel this way anytime this or this or this or this happen, we'll just feel that and we'll bring those thoughts and feelings up. And as long as those negative beliefs are there, which a lot of you can identify, you may not feel that all the way. Like I hear this all the time. I know I'm lovable, but I don't feel it. Or most of the time I feel lovable up here, but then when a certain situation happens, I go back to I'm not good enough. Okay? That lets us know that that's running under the surface. And as long as those beliefs are there, we're going to have reactions. We will have things that what we call trigger us, and then the behavior or the emotion will follow. Okay? So how to conquer shame and negative beliefs about self. Any negative belief you have about yourself can be summed up into 3 general areas. Now I know they're, different wording, but we have what we call our helpless core beliefs, our unlovable core beliefs, and our core beliefs related to our body being defective or not attractive enough, something like that, okay? When we do work to shift at a deep level, that helpless core belief, which could look something like, I'm not in control, or I'll never be good enough, something like that. If we can shift 100% to feeling empowered and a deep belief of, I'm capable of whatever comes my way, if we carry that with us, and for me, that's connected to my spirituality. I don't think necessarily me independent on my own am capable of everything, but me connected to a higher power, to God, we can do some stuff, right? So I carry this belief of I'm capable. Whatever comes my way, I'm capable of handling it. Then the next one is the unlovable. If we can shift not to a belief that we're lovable, but a deep sense that can't be taken from us. Now, a lot of us need to forgive ourselves, and we need to look at how some of the behaviors that we're ashamed of came to be. Why did we make those decisions? And it's not to excuse them, but so many people I work with have overcome huge obstacles. They've changed behaviors, they've worked really hard, yet they still think they're not good enough, not lovable. So again, it's not going to be a conscious thing of, I should think I'm lovable, I'll do some affirmations. We need to have a very strong experience of our lovability. Now, this came for me in an important way, where I realized this belief that I was holding, that I was somehow defective and not worthy of love, actually was hurting my wife and children. They were loving me, they were caring for me, and it was like I was pushing it away. I was like, no, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And when I started to realize that as long as I did that, that had the ability to cause them to believe that their love wasn't enough for me. And so I made a decision, and it was a decision. I'm going to really decide and believe that I am lovable. I had an experience with that where I could feel it on such a deep level that it can't be taken away now. Even if I make a mistake, even if I were to relapse tomorrow, I would still know that I'm a lovable person, I'm worthy of love, and that I'm capable of taking the steps to repair. So I don't live in fear of addiction. I don't live in fear of a relapse. I live with confidence that I am capable of facing challenges in life without addiction. And if I were to relapse or slip, I would know what to do to repair. And then how to repair safety, trust, and connection. This is really important, and it ties back to the first two, because oftentimes what creates a lack of safety is when we're perceiving that we're not lovable, that we're not good enough. And so we react to it, right? We get kind of upset. We actually, on a brain level, go into fight or flight. And we either get upset or we withdraw. Both those responses to a partner can feel unsafe. And so this idea of repairing safety is, how do I be connected to me and consistently doing my values? How am I living life the way I want to, independent of what's happening around us, right? So we go back to the story of me and my daughter, and she would be a 4-year-old, and she would scream and she would throw things, and I had a choice. I can go into shame and be upset, or I can tap into my value of being lovable, putting her before me, trying to understand her, being loving and kind, and I can respond. I was in charge of my responses instead of that reactivity. And so I would say the first thing to repairing trust, especially if we're talking the trust that has been hurt or the safety that's not there because of a sexual addiction, is to first understand that you can be the greatest source of helping your partner's heart heal. I've been with a lot of men who feel like, hey, I'm sorry that I hurt you, but that's your trauma, okay? Or I'm sorry that I hurt you, but that was like 3 years ago, and I've been really good since. I will tell you that those things don't work, as some of you are probably finding out. I had to learn to address my wife's pain sincerely and really understand the effect I had on her, and genuinely let her know not only that I was sorry, but I cared that there were still pains for her and that I wanted to be there for her whenever they came up. And so over time, she began to feel safe enough to share with me when she didn't feel safe. And she would ask for certain needs. And sometimes I was like, really, you need that? It surprised me. It wasn't that I was unwilling, it was surprising. But I cared about safety because I knew that without safety, we couldn't have trust, and without trust, we couldn't have true connection. And what I really wanted was true connection. Kind of this magic between us where we were best friends again. Because again, I had that deep memory, right? This woman I love, and I want her to be happy. And so I determined I would be the one to create the safety. It wouldn't be a therapist. It wouldn't be a book she read. It wouldn't be her trauma that she was responsible for. I would be the one to try to repair the safety where she could talk to me. I would be doing the work to help myself stay grounded. So when situations came up, I wouldn't, get upset or get anxious or get panicky or whatever. I knew I had to work on me so I could be a source of strength to her. And obviously she did work too, but we didn't do it separate from each other. We would talk about where we were and where we wanted to go. And the end goal wasn't just safety. The end goal was, how do we build a marriage together? Let's start with safety. And as we built safety in certain areas, we were able to build trust in other areas. And as we built trust in other areas, we were able to connect. Obviously, this is a process. And I will tell you, I've worked thousands of hours with women who have been betrayed by their partners sexually. Thousands of hours as their trauma therapist. And it was very beneficial for me because it helped me have a deeper understanding of what it must have been like for my wife. And I remember coming home and I was like, hey, did you ever feel like this? And she'd be like, yeah, how did you know? I'd be like, well, I saw this lady today and I figured you probably felt this way. And I would genuinely say, hey, I had no idea that I was creating that. I love you and I'm here for you. And we were able to mend wounds from the past. So in this course of working with partners, thousands of hours, what I learned is there are certain things that husbands can do that are more powerful than any therapeutic thing I know how to do. Now, we have, these breakthrough sessions that we do with partners that are very, very valuable and very effective. But when it comes to trust in the marriage, it can't replace that if it's not being built by the man. It can help a lot. It can, clear up some of the, the perceptions and the triggers and things like that. But if a husband's not actually being safe, if he's not being proactive in building with her, then all the work we do as therapists is just empowering them to, make certain decisions. So I want the men watching this to know that you can be the greatest source of repairing safety and trust. And then therapeutically, the things that we do with breakthrough sessions, I had a woman not long ago say that was more beneficial, this 6 hours thing, this 6-hour breakthrough, more powerful than 5 years of therapy. Okay, that's important because we got to the right stuff in the brain and it shifts and it stays there. So, how to repair safety, trust, and connection. My favorite way to think of connection is not this happy, magical thing. Now, that's our goal, but really what I'm after is first connecting in where we are. So, having a conversation. Where are you? Here's where I am. How do we get on the same page? And when you look at this on a day-to-day kind of situation, I like this term of attunement. I think of the old radio station, the kind of that you turn the dial and you find the station, right? Coming home from work and finding what station are you on and turning the dial. So I would come over and be where she is. And that might be sadness or triggered or exhaustion or stress or whatever. I would come to that and find that out. That's not happy, magical connection, but that's one of the deepest ways we can connect. And then some days I would come over here and I would share with her, hey, here's where I am, and some days that was happiness. I'd let her in on that and we would connect there. And then as we're together, we can decide where do we want to go? What do we want to do as a couple? Okay. And this allowed us to be empowered and we can create our marriages. We can be the ones to decide where we're going to go as a couple. I will tell you that without the shift on a very deep level, these beliefs about ourselves, without that, it's going to be very hard to stop the behavior. Because the way that it works is we have a perception that comes in and our mind just reads it and it has a meaning behind it. And the brain will dump chemical based on what we've created the meaning to be, and then we'll have the emotion and then we'll have our behaviors. But that, even the brain part, is not the most important piece in answering how do I eliminate reactive impulsive responses to triggers, how to conquer shame and negative beliefs about self, how to repair trust, safety, and connection. The most important thing in that I've found is really helping a man fully come alive to who he really is and who he can become. So a lot of men that I work with inside and outside of the addiction realm simply don't believe they're good enough, right? We hear this term of faulty core beliefs, automatic negative thoughts, shame, stories, or we have all these terms for it. The core of this is most men are not taught how to access their power, and they're totally disconnected from their purpose, their values. And when we help them reconnect and come fully alive, help them feel totally capable of going home and doing what it takes to repair their relationship, inviting their wife into building a happy marriage that has all the good stuff, and we help them reconnect to their purpose, meaning they're connected to being a husband and being a father and providing not only financially, but providing love and care and example, all those things that they need, right? Being in tune, being engaged. What do you need? I can't tell you how many times I ask my wife, what do you need? And oftentimes I don't know. But just showing her that I cared actually started to meet a need. She started to learn. Austin is there for me. And I would say, hey, what do you need? I care about you. She'd say, I don't know. I think I'm okay. And her brain would go, oh, Austin cares about me. This meets a core need for all of us to know that our partners are engaged in our well-being. So I will tell you, we do Rise Week. Rise Week is the most powerful thing I've ever experienced as a therapist, as a man, in helping people heal. I know this term healing is not very common in the addiction recovery world, people can heal to their very core. This is important news because I don't think we want to live in fear forever of this scary monster, addiction, and trauma coming to get us. I can't tell you all that we do there, but I can tell you that I couldn't do it in 50 minutes a week in therapy. And when I realized that, it was time for me to stop doing weekly therapy and building this process that builds on itself, that we break through on a deep mental, emotional, spiritual level and help men connect to their greater purpose as husbands and fathers, having confidence that you can get the magic back. I am not a fan of living as roommates. Like, what? That's nonsense. Like, be best friends. That's what you signed up for. Be best friends. When we get men engaged and they step up, and I recognize some people watching this will go, oh, it's all on the man. No, if you've betrayed your wife, you need to lead first. If you haven't betrayed your wife and your marriage isn't working, my belief is lead. Be the man that leads in the repair. Invite her into connection. Have a conversation. Where do you want to go? What do you want to build? I don't love using this analogy because it kind of downplays the significance of marriage, but you're kind of like business partners, right? You're building a marriage together. You're building a family. And so often we get married and we have no plan for what we're going to build. We're married now, and neither one of us knows what we're doing. We didn't get trained on how to be married people. I don't even know how to be a man yet. I'm 21 or 23 or whatever. But now I'll be a husband and I'll be a father. But we're married now, and we don't even talk about what we're going to build. We just expect that somehow we'll build this magical marriage without work. So wherever you are, wherever your marriage is, I think starting with a conversation. Here's what I would like to build. Okay, here's what I would like to build. Is it the same thing? Do you both want a happy connection? If not, you're never going to get there. You're not going to magically get an amazing marriage if it's not on purpose. So me and my wife knew what we wanted, and we knew we were really far away from that. And so I had to get my head on straight. And it wasn't for lack of trying. It was trying the wrong stuff, thinking it was the right stuff. And a lot of you have been down that road. Years and years in therapy. Lots of therapists, lots of books, right? Well, I built Rise Week to be a very clear path, but it's not just about getting trained. It's about you experiencing your strength and knowing how to hold on to it every day. Once you have that, it can't be taken away. You can have some hard days, but you know, facing each day, I'm capable of facing what comes my way, even if it's a sexual trigger or temptation or whatever, even if it's your wife's trauma. I know what to do here, and I am lovable. And entering into the relationship, knowing you're lovable, changes everything. So Rise Week is amazing. It's the most powerful thing I've seen, as I mentioned. And I don't want to tell too much about it because really what we try to do is each person that comes, I have a conversation with them and their wife if, they're married. And we go, where are you and where do you want to go? And then I share with them what we accomplish at Rise Week and how that will happen. And so if you're interested, get in touch with me about Rise Week. I'll share the details of it and I'll tell you how it can apply. One of the dangers us therapists run into is we start to talk about things as if they apply to everybody, and everybody's situation is different. Now, I know for this webinar, I'm speaking to a specific symptom, the effects of addiction, the effects of trauma, but not everybody that has an addiction or who has betrayed in their marriage or who has experienced that trauma in their marriage is the same. It's always different. So I would like to hear your story. I'd like to hear your situation. We don't accept everybody. Rise Week was built for people who want to heal, who have been trying and haven't found it. I was trying. We drove from Las Vegas to St. George for 3.5 years every week, 2 hours both ways. We wanted it and we were getting good stuff, but I didn't make all the changes I wanted. So we kept trying. I spent, $4,500 on 30 sessions of neurofeedback, just hoping for one piece, the ADHD component. And it was helpful, but it wasn't done yet. I built Rise Week to be all-encompassing. 4 days to have a complete shift, and it works. If you look at our Be the Rise website, I'll put that in the comments, you'll see that there are testimonials of people who have done a lot of work. And within 4 days of Rise Week, everything changed. And I can tell you that I talk to those people frequently. And while life still has its challenges, they hold on to that identity that they gained at Rise Week, knowing that despite everything they've been through, all the things they've done, they're 100% lovable and worthy of love, and that they are capable of healing their marriages and being the men they want to be. So in addition to Rise Week, we offer these partner breakthrough sessions. The process of breakthrough is a little bit of prep work and then a 4 to 6 hour meeting. And in that meeting, same thing, everything shifts. We're after those core beliefs. I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough. And we shift it on a brain level so intensely that, again, people can't go back. The way that it's described is, I'm aware that this thing used to would have messed me up, and I don't go there anymore. Or I can notice my brain trying to run that old pattern, and it won't do it. It's like I have my choice again. So instead of event happening and I react instantly, thing happens and I now have choice. And what's even, I guess, cooler is it's easier to make the choice because I don't feel all the same old feelings. When a husband goes to Rise Week and a partner does a breakthrough session, the couple repair is so much easier because all your baggage, all your old perceptions, all your triggers aren't getting in the way. Now, I'm trained as a couples therapist in the most effective couples therapy, which is emotionally focused couples therapy. And one of the challenges is we spend a lot of time having people share why they triggered and how to not trigger each other and how to be more safe and all these things. And I had this thought, what if we just removed all that? What if couples just weren't going into these reactive, impulsive emotions? What if the things that were happening don't carry the same meaning because they're not a threat anymore? Then can couples connect more easily? And the answer is yes. The 10 people that came to Rise Week last time, their marriages are healing. Now, there's work to be done, right? There had been damage, but they are reconnecting. They are creating safety. They're finding that best friend thing again. I don't care where you're at. I've been a trauma therapist and addiction therapist for a long time. I've heard and sat within my office things that I won't share here, the worst of the worst. And people don't have to carry those things forever. We understand how to shift it in the brain, and finding that piece for me and building it into Rise Week and these breakthrough sessions, it's the most effective thing that you can do. We also built a program, or building a program, that we decided we would do breakthroughs in all areas of life. So not just in marriage or self-worth, but we do it in parenting and spirituality and these different things. So we're building a 60-day program after Rise Week that in those 60 days, I'm confident the work you need to do to get out of the negative is accomplished. You can stay out of the negative, and you will be very clear on what to do to get up here. And you'll have already taken a lot of steps there. The last people that came through Rise Week about a little over a month ago, they're more consistently living up here in their marriages. They're connecting, they're coming through. So if that's what you've been trying to do and found yourself going back to anxiety or depression or low self-worth or, arguments, fighting, whatever the thing is, this is for you. No more years and years of therapy to make little gains. I've been there. I've been there as a therapist. That was so frustrating for me. Caring for people, trying to help them, having some of the most effective tools and seeing them come back stuck. So I, like you, was trying for a long time, making progress, but not the progress I wanted. Now there's a more effective way. And what's cool is we're so confident in Rise Week and in our breakthrough sessions that we offer a 100% money back guarantee. If you come to Rise Week, if you do a breakthrough session and you can say, hey, Austin, that wasn't beneficial, I don't feel like that helped, we'll just give you your money back because we want to help you. This is personal for me. This isn't just me as a therapist. This is me who has walked the road frustrated, trying to get to a life that I wanted, trying to become the man, the husband, the dad I wanted to be, and only getting there temporarily before I'd react into some negative behavior. So I want you to get in touch with me if you're interested. We're going to do a special offer that'll be $1,000 off of Rise Week and the partner breakthrough sessions. You get with that 1 year of our brotherhood called Legion. I mentioned the 60-day program is not ready yet, but when that comes out, you'll have access to that as well. And then we also have an app that we call the Daily Rise, where we send you messages to start your day with, and we send you messages in the afternoon to get you reconnected to who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. No more going through life, in default mode, not really being conscious of what you're doing. We want you to be intentional about what you're trying to accomplish as a man, as a husband, as a father. Now, for those of you wives who are watching, I will tell you the best thing that can happen is you encouraging your husband to come to Rise Week and for you to do breakthroughs. So if you have questions on those, let me know. Breakthroughs are one of my favorite things. I've done a lot of trauma work with people in extreme pain, and they would have good experiences and they'd have insights, but then they'd trigger in some other way. When we get to the right stuff in the right way, you can find immediate relief. Like, honestly, immediate relief. Doesn't mean you don't have work to do, but what if you could feel good again? What if just for a week even you could feel good? What would that be worth, let alone feeling like, hey, I'm me again? I know what that was like to be lost for a long, long time. And I wondered, am I ever going to get back to me? Who am I even? And when I found me again and I knew who I really was, I know that that can't be taken again. I have clarity. I'm connected to my purpose as a husband and a father. I'm connected to my wife, and I know how to get that connection. It's not random. It's not happenstance. It's purposeful. We know how to keep it. We know how to nurture our connection. We don't do it perfectly all the time, but we know how to do it. We don't argue like we used to. We used to fight a lot, bad, and I would lose myself, say things I didn't mean, and I hated that. I know how to care for her heart, and I know how to let her into mine. Life is still a journey, but knowing that you're capable, knowing that you have the tools, the answers, that's a whole nother ballgame. So I want to take a minute and I want to just check if there's any questions. Put on my spectacles. Let's see. One sec. Okay. So I want to give my my email address. It's Austin, AUSTIN, at rise, RISE, Austin at betherise.com. If you email me within the next 48 hours, we'll give you $1,000 off the Rise Week and partner breakthrough sessions, as well as the 1 year of Legion, our brotherhood, where I go on and interact with the group. I answer questions. You can, bring marital questions. You can bring individual questions. You can receive guidance on what to do in certain situations. We offer that for a year, as well as the Daily Rise app, where you get videos and guidance on what to do on a daily basis. If you're interested in that, send me an email within the next 48 hours and we'll schedule a time to really get into your situation. I want to know who you are and who you want to be and what you want for your relationship. There's nothing you've done. I don't care how stuck you feel. I know you can get out of it. I know you can get out of it quickly. I've done the road of lots and lots of therapy and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and time. If I had Rise Week all those years ago, I know it would have changed the game. That's why I built it. I wanted to build what I wish I had. I wasn't going to build this if it couldn't be effective. My parents divorced because of my dad's addiction. My dad went to therapy. My dad tried. He couldn't get where he wanted to go, just like so many of us have experienced. I decided this addiction, wasn't going to beat me. Neither was my trauma. Neither was my lack of knowledge of how to connect. I was going to learn how to be the man, the husband, and father I wanted to be. And I learned that from other people who have walked the road. And we built that into the things that we're talking about today. If you have other questions related to the things that we talked about with not triggering, rebuilding trust and safety, overcoming negative core beliefs, again, I want you to get in touch with me and let's have a phone call. I was somewhat vague in this because it's specific to each of you. But what I want you to leave with is absolute surety. You can find you again. The key component that changes everything is when a man comes fully alive to who he was always meant to be. You're not an addict. You may be addicted, but that's not who you are. I see strength inside of the men I work with, even when they've done some of the most, terrible things. We wake them up, we help them find who they really are, and they live life from that spot. That helps marriages more than anything. So I hope to hear from each of you about any questions you have, and if you're interested in Rise Week, or the Breakthrough Days. And if any of you know someone who this could benefit, have them touch base with me. We will not offer very many discounts because Rise Week has been so successful and we have a lot of people interested. This is one of the few times we'll offer a discount. Probably after this next Rise Week, there will be no more discounts. So get in touch with me, and I hope this was helpful. And I just want to say I'm grateful for you spending time with me and fighting the good fight. I believe in marriage and family. I believe in individuals overcoming the obstacles that get in their way. And I know absolutely whatever it is, it can be overcome. Nobody I've ever met with has been more broken than I felt. And nobody has carried more shame or self-hatred or self-loathing than I carried. Nobody had caused more damage to their wife and their children. And I've been able to change and grow and help them heal to the point where today I can say, I know my wife loves me, and I know that she knows that I love her. I know that my children know that their dad cares about them and that we have a great relationship. That's everything I always wanted. So if that's you, if that's what you want, we have a path for you. I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks for spending time with us.